So, welcome everybody to the Wellness Chat, a weekly webinar where we talk about nutrition and wellness overall. Present myself. My name is Willis Maliambo. I'm a wellness coach and a licensed nutritionist. I own a company that is called Daily Wellness, where we offer wellness booklet, detox supplement online courses, wellness programs, and virtual consultation. Quick disclaimer, this content is for information purposes only. This does not establish a client nutritionist relationship. And anytime you are trying to do a change to your regimen, make sure that you reach out to your healthcare practitioner. All right. This week is actually one of my favorite topic. We're going to talk about neurotransmitters, which are some of the things that plays a huge part whenever people have cravings, especially sugar cravings. So we're going to talk about that today. But here's the agenda. We're going to recap last week's. We're going to talk a little bit about the story of neurotransmitters, and we're going to talk about serotonin, which is the main neurotransmitters involved with sugar craving. And then I'm going to give you a list of things that you can do to help control your sugar cravings. All right. So, quick last week recap. This series is all about why are you not losing weight? I kind of want to do a mini booklet on this because this is a popular topic, especially within clients. And so recapping why you're not losing weight is because the fat burning formula, which is calories in versus calories out, is not working. Now, this series has all been about why it is not working. So there's a variety of reasons why that formula may not be working. And a lot of people focus on because you consume more calories from food. That's not always the case. There are other things that happens in your body that can cause you to consume more food and to stop that formula from working properly. So we talked about imbalance of microbiome. We talked about hormonal imbalances. And if you haven't seen these classes, you can catch the videos on our YouTube. And this is the last of this series, which is the neurotransmitters and how these neurotransmitters can affect the formula. Do you have any questions so far?
No, sounds good. Thank you. Not for me anyway.
Okay. Okay, so the story of neurotransmitters. So neurotransmitters, basically what they are the way in which our brain communicate to itself, because different part of the brains affects your body differently, but also it is the way in which the brain receive inputs from the rest of your body. And it's super important because some of the stuff that it affects is specifically our mood. Um, in terms of like depression. So if you know anybody that has like depression, for instance, if you look at their medication, it's going to say serotonin inhibitors. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter, and it's the medication that affects the level of serotonin in your brain, right? So it affects our mood, but also, like I said, is basically the way in which the brain communicates to everything in your body. And the brain, of course, is the control center of your body. So super, super important chemicals. Um, let me see. So I talked about mood here because that's going to be a big theme of this course. Their biocard, again, as I said, the neurotransmitters, they're chemical messengers that transmit signals between your neurons. And neurons, for those who don't know, are the cells that are found in your brain or in your nervous system in general, and other target cells. So, other target cells is exactly what I said at the beginning. Other parts of your body also provide cues to your brain on how your brain should operate. Major thing about neurotransmitters is that they are made up of proteins, specifically amino acids. And amino acids are the simplest form of protein. So when you consume a food, that food is broken down to its simplest form and it's change in your body to be used how it's supposed to be used. So I often tell my clients when you're consuming food, you're not really eating just for yourself, right? I'm not eating just for Willis. I am eating for the cells of my heart, for the cells of my lungs, for my microbiome, the healthy bacteria that's in my gut. I am eating to feed all of these different things in my body. And they are very, very small. They're minuscule. You cannot see them with your naked eye. You have to have a microscope to even see a cell or a bacteria. And because of that, when your body consumes food, it breaks down the food to its simplest form so that the cell can eat as well. So for protein, the simplest form is called amino acid. And those amino acid makes a lot of the neurotransmitters that we're going to talk about. Okay. So just like hormones, if you followed the class last week, I talked about the different hormones that affect our appetite. How are these things affecting the formula that I talked about, calories in, calories out, is essentially that affect our appetite. So any type of chemical in your body, any type of medication, because medication can do that as well. Let's talk about birth control, right? When you take birth control, it can make you consume more food, right? Because it interacts with your hormones. Any type of chemical that has the ability to mess with our appetite can cause us to deviate from the calories in, calories out formula and eventually can cause you to hinder your weight loss journey. So, some of the neurotransmitters that we're going to talk about on this list do exactly what I just said. So, dopamine. Dopamine is like your feel-good reward center. And when I talk about feel good, I'm talking about pleasurable experience. I'm not talking about your mood because there is a difference. So, when you're eating something or when you have, especially when you're eating sugars activate that part of your body, simple sugars. So, simple sugars like candy, like pastries, like ice cream, which we're going to talk about essentially later as well, because these are stuff that people crave. They activate that dopamine center, that pleasure center. And funny enough, there's been several studies that have come out that talk about cognitive diseases. So anything that deals with like your brain, like Alzheimer's and stuff like that. And there's a correlation between those diseases and dopamine. Now, this is my theory. My theory is because we activated these pleasure centers too much, we abused them with the consumption of simple sugar, they essentially affect the brain for on the long term and causes things like cognitive disease. So, like I said, specifically disease like Alzheimer's that you get later on in life, but they found studies that it's because of an imbalance in your dopamine receptors. So, something to think about because I think about when I go to Africa and I see like when I go back home and I see the elders out there, they don't have the diseases that I see in the first world country in the same way. They don't necessarily have Alzheimer's to the rate at which you see here. And they don't have access to these simple sugars as much as people who are here. So that's something to think about. Okay, so the second neurotransmitter is serotonin. So serotonin is the happy neurotransmitter. So serotonin, when it is balanced, you feel good. Okay, so it's a little different than dopamine because it's not in the pleasure realm, but you feel good. You're in a good mood. Um, you just feel good. Okay. So serotonin, we're going to focus on that because when we're talking about overeating, emotional eating, we're really talking about serotonin, and we're going to see that in a little bit. And then you have these neuropeptide, which are semi-neurotransmitters. They're found in your brain, but they're also found in your gut. And they signal your brain that, hey, you need a little bit more food. So they also affect your appetite in that way. And last but not least, you have glutamate and GABA. So these two neurotransmitters or your excitatory neurotransmitters, so when you get active, when you get excited, you release glutamate. And then when you calm down, when you want to slow down, you release GABA. So there are excellent herbs that I'm not going to talk about in this lecture, but when we'll talk about like for people who have insomnia or for people who have problems sleeping, there are certain herbs that helps to balance the GABA neurotransmitter and helps to calm you down and helps you have a restful sleep. So, when we're talking about how they affect our appetite or how they make us eat more. You want to think about imbalance as in either your body is releasing too much or your body is releasing too little. In the case of appetite and neurotransmitter, it's usually that your body is releasing too little. Whereas in a hormone, if you were in a class last week, you saw that it was kind of the reverse. The more your body releases a hormone, the more it causes you to want to eat more. Hope that makes sense, Beyonce.
Makes complete sense. Thank you.
I'm not gonna bother you because you're the only one today in class, but I just want to make sure I'm not going too fast.
Mm,
Okay, so now we're getting to the neat and greet of this class. What I really want to focus on, what changed my life when I found out about this information. Specifically, I think for women, because especially for me, when we talk about PMSing, I noticed that when I crave carbs is during PMS, and it's like my body takes control over itself. And I found out that this is the reason why. So let's talk about serotonin and sugar craving. Again, like I said earlier, all of the neurotransmitters that I mentioned earlier have an effect on your appetite. But what seems to affect the craving of carbohydrate the most is this neurotransmitter called serotonin. And funny enough, usually neurotransmitters are found in your brain, right? Because this is where the control center is. But a lot of people call the gut your second brain because the gut makes even more serotonin than your brain. It is used very differently, and maybe in another lecture, I'll talk about how the gut uses serotonin, but it does have a certain effects in terms of like how you're craving carbohydrates in your body, and also how you are either constipated or if you have frequent diarrhea. Sometimes they found that it's a correlation with serotonin, but that's for another lecture. I just wanted to show you guys the importance of these neurotransmitters. Okay, so now we're talking about serotonin and craving. So what is serotonin? We mentioned before, it is the feel-good hormone. It's the happy hormone. It's the hormone that you feel when you're in a good mood, when you're not depressed, especially for people who have seasonal depression, for instance. I believe, right? I haven't read that yet, but I believe that is correlated with a lack of vitamin D. That's been documented. But I believe that vitamin D has an effect on serotonin because it is the feel-good hormone. So if you have seasonal depression, think about getting enough vitamin D, and you'll see that your mood will kind of increase. Okay. All right. So we talked about neurotransmitters being made up of amino acid. For serotonin, that amino acid is called tryptophan. So we have eight essential amino acid. I believe it's eight or 11. Can't think about it from the top of my head, but it's like a number around there, eight or 11. When we say essential in nutrition, we mean that we need to get these amino acids from our food. As in, there are certain amino acids that your body already makes, and there are certain amino acids that you cannot get from your body. You have to get from your food. Okay. So tryptophan is an amino acid that you find in our food. Okay. And it's super important because it is the precursor. It is what our brain uses to make serotonin. The interesting thing about carbohydrates. So when I talk about carbohydrates, I'm talking about the next lecture is actually on sugars, so we will delve in that a little deeper. But when I'm talking about carbohydrate, I'm talking about complex carbohydrates. So we're talking about like rice and potatoes and starches. These are complex carbohydrate. But I'm also including simple carbohydrates. So these are easy sugar to digest. These are quick sugars like ice cream, pastries, things that have been processed, right? So carbohydrate can increase the serotonin level by making tryptophan more available to the body. So basically, what the sentence is saying is when you're eating carbohydrate, you're making more of the neurotransmitter serotonin and you start to feel really good. Okay. How is that happening? Tryptophan that is circulating within your body is more available, is more. So basically, what really happens is carbohydrate. makes all of the other amino acid that competes with tryptophan less able to go into your brain. So one thing about the brain is it filters very, very carefully what goes inside of it. Very, very carefully. Because can you imagine if it didn't do that? Any type of bacteria that circulates in your body get into your brain. People who have that condition is called meningitis. And if you know anything about meningitis, in within 12 hours, you can die because the bacteria just start eating your brain. And if your brain is not working, you're not alive anymore. So the brain has mechanisms knowing how important it is to protect itself. And because of that, even important nutrients like proteins or glucose or fat and stuff like that, well, not glucose, but glucose gets into the brain a little bit easy, and glucose is a sugar. But it just to say that it filters really, really carefully what has access to it. Okay. And so there are these filters or these pathways that get into the brain. There sometimes different nutrients compete, right? And if you have a variety of protein that look alike, they're going to compete for that access. What carbohydrate does is it increases the level of insulin. If you were paying attention last week, or if you were on my course last week, and if you haven't, maybe look into the YouTube video. Insulin is a hormone, okay? That regulates sugar. So whenever sugar gets into your bloodstream, which is carbohydrate, insulin is going to increase. And when insulin increases, it causes all the other competing amino acids to not get to the brain as fast as tryptophan. When tryptophan gets into the brain, you start making serotonin and you feel really good. So your body naturally knows that. Whenever you're going through a breakup, whenever you're going through a stress period, whenever you're going through something uncomfortable, your body automatically wants to take care of you. It automatically wants to make you feel good. And because of that, it sometimes makes you crave carbohydrate because you're feeling that way because your serotonin level are low. You guys, our body are so amazing. It is my favorite, it is my favorite thing to study. But that's one thing to note. That's what's happening. So PMS, I talked about PMS because that happens to me often. PMS is often characterized by lower level of serotonin. Not only does it make you crave, but think about it. There are period in the month for women where you just feel down and you don't know why you're feeling down. That's because the hormone change, especially progesterone in your body, is causing your serotonin to decrease. And it's making you compensate by craving more carbohydrates. It's a very vicious cycle. But on the next slide, we're going to talk about some things that you can do in order not to fall into that cycle. And lastly, insulin resistance and prediabetes crave more carbohydrate. So if we go back to what I explained regarding carbohydrate, insulin resistance, people who have insulin resistance, that include people who have PCOS, who are pre-diabetic, their hormone insulin is not working properly. So the body is making more insulin than it actually needs. However, it is causing them to crave more carbohydrate to compensate for the insulin not working properly. Because insulin wants to make you feel good, wants tryptophan to go into the brain and make serotonin. So it's a vicious cycle because people who are pre-diabetic, who are diabetic, or who have insulin resistance or who have PCOS, their body actually cannot tolerate carbohydrates. They cannot eat carbohydrate. It literally destroys their body. The sugar inside of their body becomes an acid and starts to rot on their blood vessels. So it's actually very dangerous for them, this cycle. But unfortunately, because of their condition, it is a vicious cycle that keeps going on and on and on, where they eat more carbohydrate, it's bad for them, they feel bad, but then they can't stop because the insulin is not working properly. So this was a lot, but I hope it made a lot of sense. So we're getting to the end of the class. I did good for myself today because usually I like cram information in and try to like simplify it. But today we did really good. Okay, so fighting your cravings. Now, I'm going to give you guys a quick list of things that you can do to fight your craving. If ever you believe that your craving is due, to an imbalance in serotonin. If you find yourself craving more when you have when you're PMSing, if your doctor told you that you were pre-diabetic, these are quick tips that you can do. Okay. So the first one, of course, work with a nutritionist. I can't stop saying that enough. It's super, super hard to lose weight when your body is not healthy. What I teach people is get your body healthy before you go on a weight loss plan. Because as you saw in all of the videos that I've done, whether it be the microbiome, whether it be the hormone imbalances, whether it be the neurotransmitter imbalances, there are vicious cycles that keep going where you actually have to fight your body. That's super hard to do. But a nutritionist will be able to provide you with the structure, with the supplements, with accountability, with a plan that you can slowly ramp up to for you to stop fighting your body. And of course, if you're already working with a healthcare practitioner, the nutritionist will work alongside with your doctor in order to get you to your goal. So that's number one. Number two, consuming proteins and fat. Remember, we said the craving comes from the high level of insulin because the high level of insulin makes more serotonin, and serotonin makes you feel good. So, anytime you don't feel good, anytime your body feels like your serotonin level are low, it makes you want to get more insulin. And how do you do that? Consume more carbohydrates. Doesn't care whichever carbohydrate you consume, doesn't care if the carbohydrate is rotting your blood cells or your blood vessels away. All it's focusing on is making you feel good because the body know if you're depressed, you might be able to you might go to around the route of suicide, and it knows that it's dangerous for itself. So it automatically feels like making you feel good is more important than everything else that's going on in your body when it's not true because unbalanced insulin, you're slowly killing yourself, right? Pre-diabetic, we call diabetes the slow death disease because it comes very, very slowly, but it's literally rotting everything inside of your body, right? So you want to try to balance out your body by consuming proteins and fats. Okay. You want to also try to get natural healthy sources of tryptophan that are not carbohydrate based. So you have proteins like fish, dairy. Dairy, be careful. Just make sure that you're not lactose intolerant. Nuts and seed, again, if you're not allergic to them. Legumes are excellent sources of tryptophan. Variety of vegetables have an excellent source of tryptophan as well. Bananas, if you have any of this the condition that I mentioned that affects your blood sugar, you want to be careful with the bananas because bananas tend to have a high GI. That basically means that they can increase your blood sugar level very quickly and causes insulin to come out. So usually we tell people who are taking bananas, if you have that issue, you want to make sure that your banana is unripped. But who wants to eat an unripped banana, child? Like it's very nasty. Um, so yeah, so the whole process is for you to eat proteins. So protein, what they're going to do is they're going to have the sources of tryptophan that your brain needs to make serotonin, but it's also going to have the variety of other amino acids that tryptophans compete with, right? So protein has this powerful ability to curb your craving. So, if you have a condition like I mentioned, you're not going to see that right away, okay? You need to ramp yourself up to it. And like I said, the best way to do this is to work with a nutritionist because they will be able to ramp you up to the level of protein that you need in order for you to see that you don't have any more cravings. Remember, healing is never really fast. The world was not made, even in the Bible, the world was not made in 2 days. It was made in seven. You have to think about undoing all of the habits that you've done before. And for that, you have to give yourself compassion. You have to give yourself some love, and you have to be able to be kind to yourself to let your body the time to balance itself back to normal. So, hope this helped. I'm going to end with this. Thank you for joining my webinar. We are here every Thursday, rain or shine, whether there are 100 people or 2 people or 0 people. I am here talking about health and wellness. We have a weight loss book and a weight loss course launching at the end of this month. And that's it. Let me know if you have any questions.
I had a quick question. And just
Sure.
want to start by thanking you for this webinar.
Thank
Someone
you.
like me with PCOS, a lot of things you mentioned, really resonates with me. So thank you for that. I'm not sure if this is a myth, but is it possible if, let's just say you wanted to indulge in rice or, some carb,
Hmm.
is it a thing where you can essentially buffer a carb by taking a protein first, which essentially is supposed to reduce your insulin spike? Is that a thing?
Offer a carb.
Yeah, so like you eat maybe like a vegetables first and then you eat like jollof rice. So will the insulin spike be the same or less because you've taken proteins first and then you eat your carb? Or does it really matter what order you eat?
So no, so the carb are completely different from all of the other
Hmm.
micronutrients. The carbs, they're specifically assigned the spike, the glycemic index. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
Hmm.
yeah, so it's a number that specifically indicate whenever you eat that carb, the effect that it has on your blood sugar. And I know people have said, you're talking about like food pairing, right? Like if you eat fat,
Hmm.
usually that is supposed to slow down the release of insulin.
Yes.
That's not how it works.
Oh.
Whatever carb you're eating is going to spike the insulin at the level of the glycemic index.
Mm.
What the fat, for instance, can do is it will fill you up and so you will eat less of the carb. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to spike your blood sugar.
Okay.
What the protein does is it doesn't work by not spiking the carb blood sugar, but it balances the hormones. Um, so both proteins and fats. So hormones are made up of fats and proteins, and neurotransmitters, like we talked about, are made up of your proteins. So
Okay.
they're going to balance them out. It has nothing to do, I don't know if that makes sense. Like it has nothing to
No,
do.
it does. It does. I
Yeah.
think again, I saw it on YouTube, and there's a guy who tests his blood sugar based off of like food pairings, and he always does like a protein and a fat, and then the carb, and then the spike is not as high or not as maintained. So for someone like me who just likes rice, I was wondering, well, either so if I did rice only, is there
Mhm.
a difference in spike? If I did rice and a vegetable, is there a less of a spike because of the food pairing, or like, but to your point, it doesn't really matter because um
Yeah.
based on the glycemic index is going to still spike regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
very independent. I mean, I could see how it's less. And like I said, because the protein and the fat is going to fool your stomach first. Whatever you
Hmm.
eat first is going to fool your stomach first, and it's going to be less of a shock on your blood if you eat less carbs. But it's not going
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
change the spike of insulin. The moment that your carb touches your blood vessel, the insulin spike. It doesn't
Spikes.
matter.
Okay.
But there are other options like black rice. People don't know about. Actually, Ivory Coast has purple rice, and I'm sure Nigeria has some rices as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
Those rice that have like their full brand, their full fiber,
Yep.
they have a lesser spike on your insulin than white rice,
White rice. Okay.
which is what we cook a lot with white rice, but it's not
Hmm.
necessarily the best for us. And I found especially if you find studies, diabetes is more like a Black person, an African
Disease. Yep. Yep.
disease.
Yep.
And these white starches are not good for us at all. But our land do provide a variety of other starches that are more palatable for our body to take in.
Okay.
Yeah, but that was a good question though. I might have to research that because I've heard of food pairing, but I've heard it in a way that it fills up your stomach so that you eat less carbs, which is still gonna have a better effect than if you eat like a full-blown plate of rice.
Yeah. I'll send you
But
his videos. I was
yeah,
very curious about what that looked like because I mean, again, this is a man. So
yeah,
maybe it's different for men. I don't know, but I was very intrigued by how he would pair certain foods. Typically, he would do like a protein or a fat with the carb. and you will see the spike, but then it's not as maintained and it goes right down to normal range. It's like, this is very interesting.
How did he measure it? He had like
Yeah,
the
he has the yeah, so he has the one where it's actually I'm not sure the term is, but like the
the
meter
blood.
is literally on his arm.
Oh, okay.
So
The
he's like a continuous type of
continuous glucose
testing.
monitor. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what he was using. So I was curious about if that was even a thing. But I mean, again, the data appear to kind of validate what he was saying. But I was just wondering if if that was a thing that we can consider for cases where not everybody can. I like me. I love a good old jollof rice every now and
Mhm.
again. So it's like if I can balance that with a lot of fats and protein, then do I have a fighting chance when it comes to spike of blood sugar? Was what I was really curious about.
Yeah, and it's also genetic. Of course, like I said, it's not that I never tell my clients you can't have anything. The only time I would say you can't have anything is if you actually have a proper condition that is developed. Someone that has diabetes is different than someone that has pre-diabetes and someone that has
Hmm.
insulin resistant. If
Okay.
you have diabetes, your regimen is going to be a little bit more strict than someone who doesn't, you
Pre-diabetic, I
know?
see.
Or if you have like, can't think of like hormonal imbalances, your regimen is going to be a little bit more different than someone who is on this verge of getting it. Um,
Okay.
but also like your best teacher is your body. Like how does your body feel when you eat jollof rice? If you eat and your body, so one great sign that you can use to see how much you tolerate or not tolerate is if you get like the real itis. I'm not talking about like a little bit tired from your body digesting the food, but you get like tired after eating carbs. That's a sign that your body's rejecting whatever you're eating.
Oh,
And if you notice when that happens, if you reduce the portion, it might be less, but if it doesn't go away, you might have to just be on a treatment for like 3 months and then reincorporate these foods, but at a smaller portion.
okay.
So yeah, I never tell people like don't eat anything. Like that's
It's,
not
it, it might be unrealistic,
yeah, it's not
for specific
realistic.
cultures. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
But like I said, if you have a specific condition that requires that type of limitation, and even then there's a substitute that you can use. But yeah, that was a good question. I'll have to
All
check out
right.
the video.
Thank you. I really appreciate this webinar. I look forward to the next one.
Thank you for
Of
coming.
course,
I'm
of
hoping
course.
like let me stop the recording.